after we were married for about 7 years, I think it was, I asked him out on a date and I said, "Hey, babe, I'm not straight." And Tanner's response was,
I guess neither am I.
Hello, everyone, and welcome again to Queer Relationships, Queer Joy.
We're happy to have you. I'm one of your hosts, Melissa DeSegurant.
My name is Keely C. Helmick. I am the owner of Connective Therapy Collective. I am a non-binary, gender fluid, queer, white, femme person, still solo. I think that's it for now. Practicing solo. I guess non-monogamy solo, but whatever.
And I'm Melissa. I am a genderqueer white person, bisexual, polyamorous, solo poly. Happy to be here.
And our wonderful guests, will you introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I am Alison Jamison. I am a white, cisgendered, she, her pronouns. I kind of flow between bi, pan, queer labels, and I am also non-monogamous, but mostly monogamous right now due to life circumstances.
So
yes,
due to COVID, everything's due to COVID. Tanner Jamison, he, him, I do consider myself gender fluid. I present so much masculine, so much male, and it's been, 30 plus years. I've been he, him, and I'm okay with that. Maybe at some point I'll evolve to he, them or whatever, but right now he, him feels like it fits best for me. But gender fluid, bi-curious, I guess, yeah, we non-monogamous, right? Maybe we'll get more into that, I suppose.
Yeah, we'll get to hear the story. Well, and so for our listeners they both host a podcast called Hey Babe, I'm Queer.
Check it out.
Exclamation.
Awesome.
Yes. And so we're really excited to have you be able to share your story and also hear about both personally, individually, and as a couple, of course, because it's about relationships. Who gets to start talking? Who wants to?
I usually go first because that's just how I am.
Out of mine.
The short and sweet version is we're high school sweethearts, and then we decoupled for Tanner to join the military, and I had a college experience. We kind of separated our ways, found our way back to each other. And after we'd known each other for about a decade, I proposed to Tanner and he said yes. And after we were married for about 7 years, I think it was, I asked him out on a date and I said, "Hey, babe, I'm not straight." And Tanner's response was,
I guess neither am I.
What
do we do from here?
That's the best part, like seriously, in the podcast when you're telling the story. And please, listeners, listen, that they have a full story. They just build up really beautifully to it. But I love that response. Oh, neither am I.
Yeah, just a sidebar on that, right? I feel like, and we'll get into it a little bit in the podcast too, right? It wasn't something that I was planning on coming back out to her, and it wasn't honestly even until she had the conversation with me that it really cemented for me, oh yeah, that's why I've done this before. And that's why I felt this way previously. And yeah, I guess I'm not either. Let's figure it out.
A moment of clarity for you.
Yeah.
It was really amazing. Of all of the scenarios that I played out in my head ahead of time of having that conversation, that was not even on the buffet of possible reactions. So it was
and it gets better from there.
Right. It was so surprising. Oh, that's delightful. And then where do we go from here?
Yeah. And so what have you been navigating since that date 7 years ago?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that also surprised me is I had not really experienced any sort of anything beyond kissing with a female partner. And I knew that it's something that I was curious about. And in that same conversation, Tanner is like, "Well, why don't you see if you want to find a girlfriend?
Should we find you a girlfriend?"
Mm-hmm.
In that, I'm like, all right, let's figure out, what do we go from here? If you like women too, even though at that time, right, I'm processing, I kind of feel like a woman sometimes, but I'm cisgendered as far as presenting. So, I don't have the parts and everything. So I was like, hey, if you love women too, you want to experience that, let's enjoy having sex with women. Do we need to find you a girlfriend?
Yeah. And so that like really opened the door for us looking at other forms of relationships. And I grew up in a very, not like evangelical household, but very religious upbringing, still kind of moving through some of that like religious trauma that I can see as it was in my youth. I never even knew, I think, some of the options that were out there and the different types of relationships that were available, because we had grown up in and had been immersed in as a couple in, straight monogamous relationships, even though I know now that like some of our friends that we were in, like parenting classes together have come out to us now, because it's just not a thing that we're from the Midwest, and Midwest nice is very real. And you don't talk about impolite topics like sex and relationships and money and politics and religion and all the juiciest things that make us who we are.
Yeah, I've
So
always
everyone's
found it.
having these lives, but not sharing about them.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. I always thought it was weird that we don't talk about things that matter the most to us, and what we hold near and dear, whether it be religion or love and sex and stuff. So I guess that's part of my motivation for being on a podcast, being open with the world on our story and stuff.
Yeah. Get more stories out there so that the people who feel like they're alone know that they aren't.
Yeah. To your point, sorry, we had someone that we went through birthing class with, and we have a 6-year-old presented, cisgendered for sure. Didn't, have any sort of inkling either way. We'd gone to hikes and parks and stuff as the kids were real young. But once we had the podcast, they listened to it and like sent us a message directly like, hey, by the way, I think I'm, maybe not so gender binary myself, kind of thing. So that was pretty cool. It was fun. Almost made it worthwhile.
Oh, that's really cool. So getting to hear people's feedback and people then coming out to you and telling you like, hey, I'm not straight, or hey, I'm not cis, and getting to share that. Oh, that's really awesome.
That's pretty cool.
Okay, so you had the date, you had this conversation, and then you go back home, and then did you get a girlfriend, Allison?
Well, I think for me at that point in time,
Trying to think what home exactly was. Sorry, keep going.
it was, we've moved a lot in our relationship. So I think we had about 7 or 8 different homes or apartments
We
in
averaged-
the past 15 years or so.
We average about 2.5 years per location.
Yeah, we are not the roots putting down kind of folks. So yeah, it was like, what does that look like? And for me, another part of that conversation was coming out and accepting my kink side of myself, which I didn't know was an important part of me. And in that conversation, it felt a little safer, I think, to explore that part of my sexual identity more than the directly to a girlfriend, because I was a little intimidated, because here I am in my 30s and like, what the hell does it even mean to like find a girlfriend or date somebody and be in a relationship? I felt like I had a lot more learning to do and how to navigate those waters. And so I felt comfortable looking at like the kink community and starting to build relationships that way. So that is what we did. We, found a local, FET community and started exploring that way. I think there was some like online quiz I found where we like classified what kind of kinks we were both into, so we could kind of explore what that looked like as a partnership. And through that experience, we were able to meet some more open couples and start kind of exploring that route rather than just going straight to me solo dating, because that was very intimidating. And also like with a small kid and like there's schedules to be managed.
A lot of logistics.
Yes.
You bring up the word community too, which that was going to be my question is, having come from a place where this wasn't talked about, you didn't have all this exposure to then being launched into a different, relationship structure. It sounds like the kink community kind of gave you sort of answering my question.
Definitely. Yeah.
The support, that social support you needed, and maybe the podcast too, drawing other people to you.
Yeah. I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking, but I kind of jumped the lead on this part of the relationship too, but it's for me, like I'm a doer. Like we're like, oh, we want to remodel this room. Like we buy the paint the next day. Like we kind of go and we're like, oh,
because you can always change it and go back to something
Yep.
else, right? I mean, with certain decisions, obviously you can't really go back on, but a lot of stuff, right? Let's go forward, move forward. Let's move forward and meet new people. And we're not real shy. I mean, we have our own podcast, right? So it's get out there in the community and figure it out. Okay, what does this mean for us? So start doing research and see there's local communities. Great. There's a great kink community here. There's actually a couple different communities that local to us is nice, but just doing a whole bunch of, honestly, was it FetLife, the app or website, doing a whole bunch of like, just finding local people that feel like we might get along with, like, find out that there's like a meetup at a bar. So go and just meet some folks and get to know. And like through that, found some other folks that actually we got along better with. Now some of our closest friends from that community, right? And that's honestly, I think that was probably our first really, for me, introduction to poly and open. I know you had listened to The Savage Love before and learned about ethical non-monogamy and introduced me to that then. But that's really, I feel like, our first chance to like live it now that we're being open with each other. And I think another thing too is important for us as a couple to explore that. I feel like whether it was because I'm sure at some point we can unpack exactly what it was, whether it was the comfort in each other or the shared history, but to be able to find you a girlfriend was more of like us go find you a girlfriend rather than you go find you a girlfriend.
Yeah.
Because we are committed to each other, pretty committed to each other as a married couple. And so in my mind, we wanted to explore that together.
Yeah. But also like knowing that we're probably going to make mistakes and mistakes were made, like figuring out like, what are the boundaries? What are the conversations you have to have ahead of time? Being willing to, like, when mistakes happen, have those open, hard conversations to figure out like, why did that feel bad in the situation? Like, what was I not able to say in the moment that I need to make sure that I say now, and really kind of work through those things. And also like, I think because I had this awareness and I was learning more about myself, I have been kind of taking a dive into the queer and the poly communities a little bit longer than Tanner has, because I was like learning that about myself. So like wanted to learn more about it to like figure out, how do I really identify? And so because I knew some things ahead of time, like I also knew like, don't do this, like don't be a unicorn hunter and just like look to bring a third single female.
Thank you for saying that. Yes. Thank you.
Into your bed, like if you like, I also am pro sex work. Like I think if you like there's places where that can be the best way to start bringing in other partners, and like if you're doing it in a safe and ethical way, like those are important things. And then really like talking with Tanner about what's going on for me. What do I want? What do I think? Like, I think part of the kink thing was like, we had been high school sweethearts. I'm like, I don't know if I want you to be the person who is like a dominant for me. Like, I don't know if I see you in that way or that I want to see you in that way. So like, what does that mean for our relationship? So it was really like navigating like, okay, if we're opening the books on all the stuff that it could be, what role do I want you to play? Because I do want to be partnered with you. So like, what do you bring in as a partner? What can I ask if you're interested in? And then what else do we want to bring into our relationship? And do we do that through other partners? It's been a lot of conversations though.
Yeah. And I think I'll bounce off of that, right? What I'm thinking in my mind the whole time is luckily we've had this foundation of conversation. Her and I are both pretty skilled at having open, honest conversations with our partners and with each other. And I mean, with the folks in our lives, right? Not just to us as a partnership, but, with my mom and other folks, right? Instead of like holding your feelings back and like, oh, I don't want to say anything to offend, even though that's the part of the world we came from, that's not who we are, right? We're very much more East Coasters or coasters, I guess. Looking at the West Coast, maybe the Pacific Northwest, I'm not sure, but
Oh, we're very passive aggressive in the Northwest, actually. So there's
just right in with the Midwest.
There's some definite passive aggressive. That's kind of the stereotype. I shouldn't say everyone, but yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. So then we have a real good foundation of conversation to be able to check in with each other. And because we do have such a shared history, we're able to, maybe pick up on nonverbal clues and then check in, stuff like that. So it's been an adventure. I think all in all, net positive. Mistakes were made for sure, but I think we're, better, stronger couple now. And
yeah, and I do think that that's been one of our like key success markers for us, is like being able to recognize when we've fucked up. Are you explicit? Because I swear. And be like, that was a fucked up thing that just happened, and like taking ownership when we're the ones who do the fucking up, and being able to like talk through that, and then also like when we have talked through it, letting it go. And I think that that's really hard sometimes, of like giving that forgiveness and being able to, not hold a grudge. Like that is not a thing that was demonstrated for me growing up. And so it's been like a really interesting journey as we've kind of worked through some of these things. And I think like even couples who aren't going through trying out ethical non-monogamy, like will still hold grudges over, like you didn't take the trash out.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Always. I was curious, because people listening, do you have like a script that you were using for these conversations? Did you use something from one of the known ethical non-monogamy books? Where were you pulling some of this? Because I think people listening are going to be like, oh, wow, like I wish I could be talking to my partner better. How do you have these really hard conversations?
Well, I hired a coach, and then I became one. So that's how we kind of came to this. And for me, it's been allowing me to be the observer of the conversation and not just an active participant. So for me, that's like stating what I am feeling and like why I'm feeling that way, and being able to say like, this is the facts as I see them. Like, this is the situation as I see it. This is how I'm feeling. And this is why, is because like, I think that you doing this means that.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives him the opportunity to be like, well, that isn't my intention. I don't want those actions to mean that way. And if those actions don't feel good, then let's figure out a compromise or something else that works better. So that's been the biggest thing. I know that Tanner had some training through Landmark Education, who do a lot of like that thought and feeling stuff.
It's very similar to, I don't know, thought work or whatever the terminology is exactly, right? But being able to distinguish actions separate from feelings, being able to distinguish, facts or the fact of the matter, as opposed to the way you feel about it, or to your point, like observing, right? Noticing when, oh, that made me feel that way. Like as you're going in the conversation. Yeah. I had gone to some classes back in high school. And so actually I had, pretty good foundation for recognizing when feelings come up, when my shit gets, in my face, or when, to my detriment, noticing when other people's shit gets in the way even before they do. So
it's brilliant the way you all talk about it too, because it's not just then ownership of like when somebody messes up, but it's actual ownership of your own feelings and then the meaning that you're making out of whatever is happening.
Yes.
That's a piece I can see for so many people. I feel like we've talked about this before, but there's so many like you statements that happen in a lot of couples therapy sessions where it's like, you did this, you made me feel this way, you did this, and it becomes this like defensive attack, which is so not the dynamic I hear you two talking about right now.
Yeah, well, it's funny. One of the episodes that is coming out now or just recently came out, we talk about our favorite fight, which was about when the dishes should be done, because I was making that mean that he didn't respect me or our house, and my brain would then follow that like little rabbit's trail down the hole to like, oh, he doesn't love and respect me and our marriage is going to be over in like a week. It took some work for me to be able to see that, but it came to a head and I was like, why are you not doing the dishes? And like crying in the kitchen over dishes not being done. And Tanner, because he'd had this training in high school and I wasn't aware of thought work at that time, is like, like you can change how you feel about this. Like you don't have to feel this way. And I was like, well, I'm not a robot. And I have feelings and emotions. So maybe that's not the best time to tell your partner that like they can control how they feel about a situation. But that kind of opened the doors for us, for me anyways, like figuring out like, well, what the hell is he talking about? And then like 2 weeks later, I heard my coach on a podcast and she's like, your thoughts can create your feelings and those drive actions that you take and reactions that you create. And I was like, oh, she has something there. That was the teacher that I needed to have at the time. So
You're like, wait, Tanner was right. Oh, dang
yeah,
it.
yes.
We don't need to go down that route where I was right. And I don't need to take credit for that, right? I just have, you came around to it.
Yeah.
There's different avenues to come to things. And often without that type of foundational thought work, right? It's hard to see that from your own partner. You're too close, you're too attached.
Yeah.
It's you need that, an independent third party. I say independent because they're not, they're invested too, right? Oftentimes the quality ones, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard to come from your own partner, especially when in a heated argument in the kitchen over the dirty dishes.
With tears streaming down my face just to paint a beautiful picture.
But yeah, that's all I was trying to tell you. But
Right.
I fully admit the delivery was poor.
What would you say is working well, or what has shifted and is working really well now?
I think the podcast is working really well.
Yeah, it's really been fun because in this past year, I have invited Tanner into my business. So doing the podcast together, spending that time intentionally together, like intentionally having conversations, I think around stuff that we probably would have conversations about anyways, but we're being really thoughtful about like, what do we wish we would have had access to when we were first coming out to each other? What kind of connections do we wish that we would have had, 7 years ago when this was first happening? And what can we share with folks that, lessons that we've learned throughout this process? And I think that that's been really helpful to revisit those and like, be like, oh yeah, like we fucking killed that. Or like, oh, this is something that we're still having issues with. For example, I struggle with saying like, this is a gift that I want, because we're like in the holiday season. It was just my birthday. I have a hard time like asking for what I want in that regard. Other places, I have no problem asking for what I want. But when it comes to that, and I still sometimes default into that, like he should be a mind reader when it comes to those
Do
things.
exactly what I want. I don't have
Yes.
to ask for advocate. I'm with you there.
Yes. Yeah. So we've had some really good conversations around that.
How's it working out for you?
Yeah. No, I have to learn my skills too.
Yes. Yeah. So I think like it's this past year being really intentional about the conversations we're having has led to even better like spontaneous conversations, which is really fun.
Yeah.
And really like the foundation of our relationship has always been talking and writing letters. And because, we went to high school in the, early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, and he was in the military at that time, like we would only get brief communications, or like every couple of months we would talk on the phone for like 2 hours and then not be able to communicate for a long time. And so I think that the conversational relationship that we have has really kind of built that foundation so that we can talk about the hard shit.
Yeah, I think from my side of it, what's the intentionality, right? That's really going well. The intentionally scheduling time, of course, it always shifts with we have a kiddo at 6. It's always shifting, trying to run the household together and raise a kid. But scheduling the time to have some meaningful conversations. Yeah, it's the structure of the podcast certainly helps, guide that along and form some structure for it. And so we have to keep doing it and, committing to an episode a week, to keep doing it, to keep going, and can't push it off too long is not only, to your point, like rehashing, our story and getting that out for other folks, and then diving into, what's going on with us right now. But yeah, it's certainly sparking other things, that we didn't intend to necessarily talk about, but we are talking about it now.
And the other thing that I think is going really well is we're both all in on the other person's
Ooh.
dreams. And like, I might get a little clumped with that, but like he so fully supports me, like being a business owner. I went full time in my own business this year, like investing in podcast equipment and doing that with me, and really like believing in the business that I have laid in front of me. And then for Tanner, something that he has wanted to do since before we got married is travel and like see more of the world. Like when we got engaged, he literally had an old RV that he wanted to like travel around in, but I'm like, that's not how we do things here. But we are like actively planning making that be a reality next year. Like we're looking at the rig, we're looking at the roadmaps, and what does that plan look like? We're finding alternative schooling opportunities for, you know, what does that look like when we're on the road, and how do we both still work, and what does that look like? And like really, if this is a thing that's important to you, which I know it is, like how can we make this happen? Like how can we make the things that you are dreaming of a reality? And I think that that's like a really awesome place to be.
Gotta not make eye contact. I'm gonna start crying myself. We didn't bring the tissues.
We did not bring tissues.
I got my hanky though.
Oh, it's so because we've talked about autonomy and connection, and I hear you both being like just wonderful, I mean, teammates, but also like co-creators of this life where both your individual and, you know, interests as a couple get to exist and flourish. And it sounds like that's part of what's working. And maybe it's some of what you've already said, but I have so many clients who are asking like, what happens when NRE is gone? Like, what do we talk about? How do we do long-term relationships? And I've even had people in long-term relationships going, yeah, it just was awkward when we went out on our date. Like we had nothing to talk about. Like I know everything about them. So yeah, I mean, but it doesn't sound like either of you are in that space with one another. I hear like the genuine excitement and curiosity about one another's lives and what you want to build.
Yeah, I think that is definitely there. And I think part of what brings that magic in is the like future focused conversations of like, what do we want to create on purpose? Like, not just how are we living our day-to-day lives and what do we have to manage this week and when do we need to schedule appointments and all of the like day-to-day maintenance that you kind of start defaulting into when you've been in a long-term relationship of like just surviving together, especially after the past couple of years of COVID and like literally just surviving to get through and what that looks like. But what do we want our life to actually look like? Not just what is it right now, but what can we create together in the future? And that's pretty freaking exciting.
Yeah, agreed.
Oh, they're so cute. It's making me happy.
Is it continuing that field, Melissa, of you finding love?
Yes. Well, I think I'm enjoying everyone else's love right now.
If you are open to talking, I want to hear more a little bit about the gender exploration and how that's been in the relationship or where that's at.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more of it too.
Sure brought my Todrick Hall poster in, where he's, I remember what the outfit is, but you know, it's not his unicorn outfit. But I don't know if you're familiar with Todrick Hall.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not.
We will have an introduction next
Okay.
I will sort you out, Keely. I'll help you out. I'll get you some links, show you some videos.
Okay.
You have not lived.
Yeah. He's a fabulous gay black man, has pop songs. He's done visual albums on YouTube. Essentially, like it's a musical, more or less, where it's just one song into the next of his entire album. So it's like music video after music video, but it's like a musical album. Done that a few times.
Can't believe I haven't heard of this person. I'm like obsessed
They're
with
amazing.
musicals.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Okay.
But just, I think that's really just recently embracing that feminine side for myself. I kind of touch on the podcast when we talk about our story. Looking back, right, there were signposts, to use your phrase, of like, oh yeah, I guess I've not always been cishet or cisgendered, right? And gender conforming, you know, and find the other same sex attractive from time that growing up, it's not necessarily something you talk about, or we haven't had a whole lot of experience with that in the Midwest kind of thing. But being able to explore that with someone I know and trust and love, it's been pretty liberating. And I think, yeah, to your point, right, we celebrate each other, and she's been nothing but supportive for me in exploring that side of myself.
Yeah, it's like when Tanner told me like I don't always feel masculine or like a man. It was like, oh, that tracks. And I mean, I've known him since he was 17 years old. So like there's a lot of growth that happens from then to where we are now in our, you know, late 30s, early 40s, and all of the changes that go through that, and seeing you like having the confidence to embrace that side of you has been really awesome for me to witness. And like,
Thank you.
I'm like, he's fucking badass, like owning these parts of your identity that I'm so honored that I get to witness. And I feel like because it's not like necessarily something you're doing a ton in public even.
No.
But
Yeah.
like, so I'm like one of the rare people that like gets to see some of this part of his life. So like it's pretty amazing to watch him explore. And also like I know that it's still a beginning too, because you haven't like done a super deep dive on like figuring out what all this means. It's kind of just like, well, we're gonna ride the flow as it comes up and see where it goes. And I'm just like here for the ride.
Cool.
Yay. That's, I mean, and for that support, because we don't always see that, like even within non-monogamous queer couples, when then gender comes up or someone is identifying differently than when they first got together, and there's so many situations where partners aren't as supportive, and just even within the community there's like differing supports depending on who you're interacting with and where you're at. So like
Yeah.
it's so
Yeah,
nice to hear this.
Sorry, I didn't mean to speak over there.
Oh, that's
Keely. Yeah,
okay.
I absolutely fully acknowledge how fortunate I am to have her, you know, next to me, to be able to go through this. Because yeah, those are completely valid responses too, right? Like you don't have to be supportive if your partner all of a sudden becomes a different gender in their mind and in your eyes, right? It's not something that I think is required of folks.
Yeah, they just wouldn't be able to stay together.
But yeah, like I think it's been kind of validating for me to have a partner who's like experiencing these things and like, oh yeah, no, I'm definitely at least bi, if not pan or queer, like, because I love this person. Like that's what it is for me. Like Tanner's my person.
Yeah.
At least one of my people. I'm, you know, but like been my main person for a long fucking time. And like so much of my life I have been able to share with him, and I want to make sure that that is something that we can continue on in whatever way, shape, or form that looks like. Like we love each other, we want to stay committed to each other, but like we're also, I don't know if either of you know Tim Minchin, but he's like, I think Australian comedian, music artist, but we went and saw him in concert when we lived in DC like 10 years ago. And he has a song of like, if I never met you, like probably somebody else would do just fine as my partner. Like somebody else would probably do. You know, like
Very
there's
romantic.
no one person on the planet for the other, you know, for a partner. And
Okay.
like, it's just like, it's a really fun, like tongue in cheek, like love song, like anti-love song. And I feel like that's true. Like, I love you and I do want to be your partner, but also like if something didn't work out between us, like that's going to be okay too. Like we have I think it would be shocking if we weren't friends for the rest of our lives. But like if something happened and we decided that we weren't,
If it wasn't working out anymore, let's
Yeah.
not pursue it. Let's not try and stay attached to what it looks like.
yeah,
Right. I mean, yeah, I'm more committed to our partnership, whether it's marriage, or what it looks like, right? That we would continue to be partners. Yeah, I couldn't
Yeah.
imagine maybe a traumatic brain injury would change our personalities or something, but I don't think there's any reason we wouldn't stay
Right.
friends, partners in some respect, right? Certainly as parents
Right.
now, you know, more than, or at the very least, I suppose.
Yeah, it sounds like what I'm hearing is really that the thing that many couples have challenges with is the two of you have maintained growth within these years of being together, many years being together. You don't have that stagnant, like, married couple that then kind of just like does their own thing and doesn't really change much and is unhappy, and you don't emulate any of that, and you have this growth, like you support each other. Like, isn't that the main thing, is like finding someone that you can grow with and change and develop and
Absolutely.
still love?
Like Melissa was saying, right? It's, I already know everything about it. It's like, I offer that you don't. You don't know everything about them.
Yeah, like how could you possibly?
You don't.
Especially when, as you're both saying, like you're still unpacking and learning things about yourself.
Right? Yes, absolutely. I think like we are both just innately curious people, and we're always going to be following our curiosity, whether that's about ourselves or something else. And that's fascinating. Like that's what I think keeps us coming back to each other too, is like, oh, I learned this thing and we don't have the exact same interests. So like Tanner's way more into like tech and the internet and how those things work, and I'm more into like creative stuff and how the brain works and physical sciences and stuff like that. And like we can share those interests and be like, I'm learning new things that I want to share with you. And like it's a pretty fun partnership.
I want to know their queer joy. I want to go to Queer Joy.
Okay, you're ready to go to Queer Joy. Yes.
I'm so happy now after this this interview. I just want to have more joy.
Well, Alison, before we go to Queer Joy, can you just let listeners know how they can find you? And then Tanner, if there's things that that listeners can find you as well, let them know your info or any upcoming things that you want to share with our audience.
Yeah, so our podcast is Hey Babe, I'm Queer. You can find it on basically any podcasting app. New episodes come out every week. And if you are a later in life queer or bisexual and you want some relationship coaching or even help crafting your coming out conversation to your partner, that is what I help people do. So you can find me on all social media at Alison Jamison Coaching, or my website's just alisonjamison.com. And it's awesome work. Like I love helping people like feel safe enough to come out to their partners and show them that like it doesn't mean that your relationship has to end, and that it is the beginning of a series of conversations to make your relationship what you want it to be, whether it happens to be like with that same partner or if it means a like decoupling and finding your next love.
Oh, cool.
So you can find me on the podcast, Hey Babe, I'm Queer. I'm not really out really much anywhere else, even yet. It's so new to me, for me rather. It's not new to me, but it's new for me coming out later in life. Mostly it's just helping produce and edit, and I'm kind of jealous.
Co-host of the podcast.
Yes,
I'm jealous you folks have an editor and producer.
Someday, babe, someday.
Well, so as Melissa was saying, we like to end the episode with Queer Joy of the Week and whatever that means for you. So we have everyone share what their queer joy is.
I admit, I did some homework today. I came prepared with props.
Yes.
My queer joy this week, honestly, was sharing with our kiddo that I don't always feel like a boy. And I can't do it. It came from, we're reading this book, Sex is a Funny Word. And it's a great book for those that don't know, right? Maybe you can include a link. It's a fantastic book, very open, very inclusive. And it has conversations about genderqueer folks are right along there with, the boys and girls in the stories. And it talks about that right away. And we were just reading it with them. And I just, want to make sure it's like, how is it meaningful to them as we're parents just reading in this story? And this, because we are so heteronormative presenting, I want to make sure to express for them like, hey, so I don't always feel like a boy. Sometimes I feel like a woman. And they got it. On the way to school the next day, I look with teary eyes and I'm starting to lose it. I can't remember who brought it up, me or them, but definitely echoed the same thing back to me, right? Like, Yeah, I don't either. I always feel the same. So that was definitely joyous for me as a parent.
Oh, you got me tearing up.
Seriously, I'm like, whew, I don't know if I can do this. Mine's like so cheesy now. And that's like so
For
sentimental.
listeners, you can't see. I think all of us are teary-eyed.
Yep.
Just for people listening.
Oh,
Just
goodness.
edit me after her. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, mine's super cheesy, but
It's your
really
it's your queer-
reflects
own it. It's your joy, babe.
it reflects us as well too, I think, as a couple. My queer joy right now is the holiday movie complex embracing more queer stories in our Christmas movies, because as much as I am not religious anymore, I still love a good holiday movie. And Netflix has one, I think Jingle All the Way or something like that. It's coming out. There's a couple Hallmark movies that focus on like lesbian romance, and I am just here for it in watching some gay holiday romance stories.
For sure. Yes.
It's amazing.
What's your queer? I'm still racking my brain right now because I've been kind of out of it and sick. So I gotta think of it. Do you have one?
Yeah, I do. I had an awesome start to my weekend. I got to go speak at George Fox University to the counseling students there who are just finishing up their education and going to be sitting with clients in a few months. And I got to do a whole presentation on non-monogamy and open relationship styles. And I just was such an honor. I mean, also, this is a Christian university, so it was a very big deal for them to ask me to come in and coach their students on this. And I planned about a 45-minute presentation, kind of really anticipating not a lot of feedback and it was their last day of the class. Like, they're all tired, but my gosh, these students were incredible. And they asked so many wonderful questions, and they were so receptive and just curious. And it was genuine. It made the presentation go like an hour and a half. I'm like, oh gosh, like I can leave, But I was really, really moved by the receptivity and so grateful for that opportunity to have that platform to really, similar to how you were talking about the podcast and giving people models that you didn't have. I didn't have any classes on non-monogamy when I was learning to become a therapist at all. So to be able to offer that to this whole group of people was amazing for me. I was buzzing for like 3 hours after the presentation.
That's amazing.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so fun.
Yay. Well, I have a really simple queer joy for the week, and I think that's okay. Very just brief way to end it, which is I've just really enjoyed planning our little gathering at Connective Therapy Collective. We're doing a gathering for us, a winter gathering after solstice. And I have enjoyed so much planning it, which includes, inspired from sex education, the show Sex Education, vulva cupcakes. So I'm very
Nice.
like I'm just like so excited.
I'm so excited too now.
That's amazing.
How far are we from them?
Yeah, and it's a queer-owned bakery, and it's great. So that's been just the fun, and I really like sweets, so I think that's it too, especially during the holidays. It's like thinking about sweets makes me all happy. So, well, it's been so wonderful speaking to you, Alison and Tanner. Thank you for joining us today, and everyone, thank you for listening. And you know how to get a hold of us through Connective Therapy Collective on Instagram, Facebook, all the things. And hope that you all have a joyful queer week.
Thanks for listening to Queer Relationships, Queer Joy, a podcast by the Connective Therapy Collective, hosted by Keely C. Helmick and Melissa DeSeguron, with audio edited and produced by me, Cardinal Marking. Intro music is by Bad Snacks. This week's guests were Alison and Tanner Jamison. Find Alison, Tanner, and their podcast, Hey Babe, I'm Queer, at AlisonJamison.com. That's ALISONJAMISON.com. Or, you can click the link in the show notes. If this episode made you smile or think, tell us about it. If you hated it, tell us about that. Review us on iTunes, or send us an email at info@connectivetherapycollective.com. For more queer joy, visit our website at www.connectivetherapycollective.com. Love ya. Bye.